I want to share with you a story of how a single email send got us blacklisted by Google and cost us over $25,000. And I'm not talking about lost revenue. I'm talking about $25,000 out the bank to fix this mistake. The costly mistake also erased over a decade of work, a decade of investments in the business. And I don't want you to have this same experience. So I'm going to break it down in this video. So what happened is the CEO of a home improvement company that I was working with at the time, she was tight on cash. Projects are expensive. You have to pay for materials and labor. And if you don't get the project 50%, 75% finished, you don't get the payments through the project, right? So she was tight on cash, needed money, and she got a list of wealthy homeowners that live on the Palm Jumeirah. And this is the Palm. You've probably seen it before. It's here in Dubai. She sent an email to them without consulting us, and the fallout and the aftermath led to us having to rebrand our website. We had to change the entire website, rebuild it. We lost 10 years of SEO work that we had done because all of the links were going to that website. We had to change the uniforms for over 50 of the workers of the teams. And we also had to update all of the brochures, the leaflets, the printed materials, the yard signs. The vehicles had to have new wraps and decals, and even the office signage. And we had a joinery at that point also. So there were some pretty big signs that had to be replaced. So probably 25K is conservative, to be honest. So before I kind of get into that, my name's Sky. If you're new here, at the time, I was the marketing director for that company. They were doing about $3 million a year in annual revenue, so a successful company. In the past, I've worked in a couple of Fortune 500s. I've helped generate over $100 million in revenue over my career. And I now run Home Pro Growth, the world's first all-in-one powered platform for home improvement service providers. So the issue, this whole thing can be boiled down to just one single thought and one single trigger point. And that was the desire to blast the list. And I see this a lot where business owners think, well, hey, let's just hit the list. We've got a big list of this many people. If 1% buy, it's a lot of money. Let's just do it. And it's kind of seen as an easy win. And I really want to explain to you how that can go sideways really, really quickly. And I'm going to give you two examples, one from a while back and one from last week. So the Palm list disaster, as it later came to be known, we got the list of homeowners from the Palm Jumeirah. Somebody gave it to the CEO. She had built this list somehow from networking or whatever. And she was like, hey, I've got this list. Why don't you email it? And the Palm Jumeirah is the man-made island that I showed you, and it's where some of the wealthiest people live. So that was even more appealing, right? It was like, I can hit this list of thousands of wealthy homeowners and I'll make some money. And to give you some context, the Dubai home market, just in Q1 of this year, the sale of homes crossed $1.73 billion. So there's a lot of homes that cost more than $10 million, and they're selling like 19% more than last year. So this is a market where wealthy people come. There's no taxes. It's luxury living. They can do, what they want. It's relatively safe. So there's a bit of an exodus here, and this market is kind of popping. So the CEO sent the email to the list without any pre-warming up, any strategy. It was just like this emotional, I'm going to hit send. Within 2 days, we were blacklisted by Google. And 7 years later, as I look at it today, that website is still blacklisted. There was no recovery possible. Okay. I don't want this to happen to you. Now, last week, there was another example like this where one of our clients wanted to get more sales, and they had an email list of 350,000 people. Now, in this case, this wasn't a list that they'd just acquired. This was actually people that had opted in for their list. This was their audience, but they hadn't emailed them for a while, and this list was kind of disengaged. Generally, we were sending about 35,000 emails a day. When this client hit send on an email to the entire list, that was 350,000 people got an email that day. So that's a 10x increase, right? And again, they did this without consulting us because they were hurting for cash. They just wanted some volume. Well, the consequences of that is our domain reputation got downgraded by Google from high to medium. We got a 7.7% spam complaint rate. It was 27,000 spam complaints. And that's the worst we'd ever seen. To give you context, as I told the client in this message, the industry standard is less than 0.1%, which is one complaint for every 1,000 emails, right? the open rates had already started dropping as a result. So before that send, we were getting 37% of our emails opened. And after the very next morning, we were down to 30%. And we then were expecting to see it drop to 20% in further days. So open rates had almost halved. So just to clarify that, that means almost half of the people are getting messages than the week before. So this idea of you send more volume and more people see your offer doesn't work if the open rates drop, right? Because less people are going to actually receive the email in their inbox. It's going to go to spam. So less people see the offer. So it's kind of like a catch-22. It doesn't work. So you can see here, this is in Google Postmaster Tools. This is Google's own tool. You can see like our spam rate here was pretty low, and then bam, 7.7%. And then we obviously told them, hey, like, don't do that anymore. And it came back down. But it's pretty intense, right? The domain reputation that I was talking about went from high down to medium. So you can see we were on a high, and then bam, within a day, went here from the 24th of Sept to the 25th, dropped down. You can see it just here in a single day. And the thing really important to remember here is Google represents about 90% of email clients, meaning 90% of the world uses Gmail for their email. So Postmaster Tools from Google, which is free, by the way, gives you a really good indication of what's happening with your list. So it's so important. And this domain reputation is probably the most important metric. If this is not high, you're going to get into the inbox less, which means less people are opening your emails, less people are seeing your offers, you make less money. And here's an example. So our revenue in this business, we were doing over 100K a day at one point. And you can see we were already kind of lower here because of some other things going on in the business. But look at this, 26th of September down to $5,000 a day in revenue. Just earlier that month, you were doing 20K a day, 30, 15, 18. The numbers just drop significantly because of this issue, right? So the desire to do this send to increase revenue ended up hurting us. And I kind of explained to the client this concept of, yes, we're agreed, you want to blast as much of the list as you can, but you need to do that while maintaining the domain reputation and the open rates. So the goal they're trying to achieve here is like increase the send volume, but you have to do it in the right way. So the client told me at the time, he's like, yeah, okay, it caused these problems, but I got 19,000 more people to open, right? Well, okay, so we were sending about 35K emails a day before. So 19K more, great, 53,000. Okay, so let's play that game. That's okay, but if the bounce rate, which is the email was actually bounced, meaning like it wasn't a real person or the email address doesn't exist anymore, that's a big red flag for Gmail. And an unengaged list often has people whose emails will bounce. That's a red flag. The second red flag is the 10x increase in send volume. We went from 35,000 emails a day to 350K. Gmail doesn't like it. If you're sending at this rate and all of a sudden you shoot up, it feels like spammy behavior. So they're going to penalize you. And then the low open rates is the third red flag. We were getting 35% open rates. When this campaign got sent by the client, it was a 5.5% open rate because it's a disengaged audience, right? So those three red flags, bounce rate, increase in volume, and low open rates, that caused the problem for our domain reputation to get downgraded. And that would then drop our email open rates from 35% down to 20%. So that means that, okay, you can send 53,000 emails. Yes, it's 19,000 more, but because of the 20% open rate, you're now only getting 10.6K opens. The goal is to be able to send to that extra 19K or whatever the extra audience is, but while keeping the open rates at the existing rate, in this case, 30%. That way you could still send to this like bigger audience. And if you maintain the open rate, you get more opens, right? Over here is 53K, but because the open rate dropped because they did it in the wrong way, they only had 10,600 opens. If they did it in our way, we were able to send to the 19,000, maintain the 30% open rate, and that gets us 15,900 opens. So it's the same send volume, but 47% more opens. And the way to do that is you have to get them there in stages, right? You just increase the volume slowly. And just to be clear, the first example where it's a cold list, you don't do it through your normal email, right? You don't send emails to a list using the domain that you use for your website, that you use for all of your marketing and your branding. because you get blacklisted and you're done. In this case, in this example where the client actually owned the list, it was their opt-ins. You can do it, but you can't jump up in volume immediately. You can't email a list that you haven't emailed out of the blue and send like a big, huge list in one go. It just doesn't work. You have to step stare it and stage it. So if you've done this, how do you recover? So the first thing is you need to check if you're blacklisted. So you can go to MX Toolbox, and I'll link this Google Doc in the description below. And there's a blacklist check. You put your website in, you hit the orange button, it will tell you if you're blacklisted. If you're blacklisted, it is almost impossible to recover, okay? Like I said, the client that sent the Palm Jumeirah email, 7 years later, they're still blacklisted. There's articles out there that will tell you you can write to the blacklist and get them to remove you. I've seen it work maybe one time out of, 20, 30 times. It doesn't work. It's time intensive, and it's probably just best to move on. If you're not blacklisted, but you've got bad metrics, which means you've got high bounces, high unsubscribes, you get a lot of spam complaints, first thing to do is immediately pause sending, or go back to sending to the volume that you were sending at and the segment you were sending at before. So for us, when we sent this big list, we immediately went back to sending to our smaller engaged list that we've been doing before, because then Gmail sees it as we're sending this volume to this list, big spike, but then it goes back to normal. And if we maintain that for a while, our domain reputation can recover. So essentially, don't increase email volume till the domain rep recovers. So here's an example. On average, it takes 22 days. So you can see here we were high, and then like July happens, mid-July, bam, we get downgraded, and it took a while to get back up. And in this case, it took a little bit longer than 22 days because this client had kind of done like high, medium, because they kept sending to people that they shouldn't in the, the hunt for some cash. And Gmail kind of said, okay, these guys, they're going from medium to high. I'm going to give them a longer timeout to teach them, right? If you're in a different type of business and you've never really had that problem before, 22 days of good behavior, you normally back up where you need to be. So again, just to recap, right? If you're not blacklisted, but you've got bad metrics, then you go back to sending how you were sending before in smaller batches. And then you can do a re-engage sequence in very small batches because you want to get replies. If Gmail sees people replying to your emails, they see it as a positive sign that that email was valuable. People don't reply to things that aren't valuable unless they're telling you to go away and stop emailing them, right? Which may happen, but generally replies are considered a good thing, particularly if you send, let's say, 1,000 emails and you get replies from 10, 5, even 5%, but like 5, 10, 15%. That's huge for Gmail. It's a great sign, and that will help you recover your reputation faster. So one way that I've seen work really well, and we're actually doing this right now, is you do a contest where you give $100 to the person that replies to the most emails. So you tell them, search up my email in your inbox. You give it to them so they can just copy and paste it. And you tell them, reply to as many emails as possible. The person who replies to the most emails is going to win $100 on Friday. So you keep the window of time short. And this really works because they're going to search through your inbox. And this works better if you've been sending emails over time because you've been marketing over time. But let's say the average person replies to 10 emails and only 10 people on your list do it. That's 100 replies. That's huge, okay? If you have a bigger list, you get a bigger influx, and this is even more powerful. For the cost of $100, you can rehab your email reputation, and it works really quick, okay? Another option you can do if you don't want to give $100, you can reply yes to get something free. So what does that mean? You send an email and you tell these guys, here's this thing that I usually charge for, and it has to be something that they want, okay, something valuable. So I've seen people who sell a program for $1,000, couple $1,000, or they have a service that's like really sought after and expensive, and there's people on the list who are going to want that service. You say, I'm giving this away to one person on Friday, or 3, even better if you can do more, right? Reply yes to this email, and I'll pick one of you to get this. That way, it's a little bit easier than the contest for the most replies, because you don't really have to like calculate who replied the most, even though there are ways to automate that. But the just reply yes, all you have to do is you just search for replies, anybody with yes in caps, right? And you just choose somebody at random. And there's tools online where you can put the names in and like press a button and it spins a wheel and you can choose who the winner is, or you can just scroll, close your eyes and pick one, right? It doesn't really matter. The point is you can drive a lot of replies if you do something like this, and that can really help. So the kind of final word of warning and what not to do is don't send emails to large unverified lists, especially if it's not a list that has opted in for you, okay? It's actually a violation of the Canned Spam Act. There's GDPR regulations in Europe. You can get significant fines, and some of the fines can be up to 2% of your annual revenue, okay? It can be significant. Do not just hit an email list that's not yours. If the email list is yours, then avoid sudden spikes in volume, okay? Gradually increase sends. The way that we like to do it is we have our like main engaged audience and we're sending them emails every day. And it can be 2 a day. It depends on like how engaged they are. Then you've got your other audience who you haven't emailed in a while. They're not so engaged. With those guys, this is where we recommend doing things like this, where there's a contest or reply yes to get something free, because you want them to go from not opening your emails to actually opening and engaging. And when they do, you can then move them across to that other like engaged segment that you send emails to every day, right? Really important also is if people stop opening your emails, unsubscribe them, okay? If you want, you can put them on another list so you have them there for future, because you might want to re-engage them. You might want to take all those emails, go to Facebook or Google, upload them into a customer match audience, and you can run ads to them instead. So those people still hear from you. You can do cold email to those people. There's like a ton of other strategies. That's a subject for another video. But the point is you want to take them off the list if they're not opening, and you can market to them in other ways, okay? But just don't do sudden increases in volume. And the last one, and this is free, by the way, Google Postmaster tools. You can monitor your reputation. Highly recommend it, highly valuable. Go in there and keep a look every week. We do it daily because we send a good amount of emails every day. So you just go in there and you check, and you want to make sure that your numbers are good. You're looking at your spam rate. User reported spam rate is what it's called. You're looking at domain reputation, and you're looking at spam feedback traps. Okay, that's where there's these email addresses out there that can get onto your list. And if you email it, it marks you as a spammer. You've been trapped, and you're going to have a real problem sending emails from your domain. So those 3 things are really the reports we look at in Postmaster tools. I recommend you do the same. Do not make an expensive mistake, okay? If you have any questions on this, you want to share anything, any experiences you've had, any tools that you've used, any ways you've found to re-engage a list and recover, I'd love to hear it. You can leave a comment for me in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks.